Chuck Daly used to use this expression, which I had never heard in coaching. And he said to me, never teach anything offensively or defensively, especially offensively, unless you know you're 100% sure it's going to work. Because if you show the guys a new play, a new offense, a new out-of-bounds play, and we can't score in it, guess what? They don't think you know what the hell you're doing. And so I've always done that. And I think, so the level of play doesn't matter. It's really the expertise of you teaching. And when you teach it with enthusiasm, but based on their skill level. Really important. Hey, welcome to another Coaching You podcast with the coach, Brendan Suhr, presented by Noah Basketball. Today, Zach Kendrick and I are going to talk and answer a lot of questions from a lot of coaches that come to our events and clinics. Every time we do a clinic, we give our attendees there, we give them our email, direct email, my personal email, also give them my cell phone. And during the year, I get texts and stuff. So Zach and I have been compiling. We had about 60 or 70 questions in the last month and a half, 2 months from coaches that are out there. We picked out about 10 of them that we wanted to answer, as many of you are going into the last month or 6 weeks of your season. So Zach, what do we have for our great coaches that follow us and are with us and part of our family at Coaching You?
These are some questions that have come in from, like you say, the last couple months or so, and we've compiled a list. Not going to share any names, but there were some that we thought would be worth sharing with the audience for sure. So, Coach, we'll get right into it. The first one we have was from one of our high school coaches from last summer's event. He said, I have 4 weeks left in the season. I'm really struggling to find the right balance of time and intensity with my practices. I want to make sure that I'm covering everything to maintain our edge, but I also don't want to tire out my players or even worse, get someone hurt. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest concerns I always have with practice is, and again, most of my philosophy has been come from football coaches. And I think, their season's a long one. And what I notice is how they change the length of their practices as the season goes on. And I've always been, and Chuck Daly was the first one to really teach me this years ago. And as the season goes on, we shorten our practices. So when we're down to the last month or so of the season, actually, with Chuck and I in the NBA, when we hit January and we were going to play till June, but we had been going since October, we were down to 1 hour practices. And then when we got to the end of the season, to the playoffs, getting down there, we were never longer than 45 minutes. But what we did is we accomplished everything that we needed to. The biggest thing at this time of year is, number one, obviously try not to get your players hurt or overtraining them where they can get hurt. But the biggest thing was to maintain their confidence in their conditioning, but at the same time, make sure that you're doing things and giving that, don't be monotonous and give them the same stuff every day. We would always keep teaching, and it might be once a week, we might introduce an out-of-bounds play, a wrinkle into, we played against a team that really hurt us by trapping pick and rolls. So now all of a sudden we put that in so we would have that in our bag. And so so that as the season goes on, your team learns more, they get better, and so that they're on that upward trend as the season ends. But I believe the biggest thing is never longer than 1 hour of practice in these last 4 weeks, and be very positive. But yet we still believe, as you know, Zach, we still believe in scrimmaging. So that's when we really use our controlled scrimmage, our 2-basket scrimmage, so that we're working on everything we want, but we're working on in short bursts for them.
For sure. The next one says, our district has a few teams that plays its own, so we're probably going to face a 2-3, a 3-2, a 1-3-1, and a matchup. Do you have any ideas on what we can run against these?
Yeah, it's amazing now how I've seen in the college and really in the college and the high school game is that everyone's playing man-to-man. Very few teams are playing zone. I really don't know how to explain that. And my thing is, I love to have teams prepare for me by making them take practice time. So that's why I always have a zone or a press in my bag so that all of a sudden when you're preparing for our teams, you have to practice that. But here's the thing. If we're playing against a 2-3 zone, and the good thing about I've taught when I've done our different lectures on our Coaching U Plus app, I've done one, maybe two lectures on zone offense because it's one of the things that at most of our clinics, coaches rarely want to speak about. So I try to put that out there at least once every 2 years. But against the 2-3 zone, I like to run what we call X, which is a 1-2-2 set. When the ball's thrown, let's say to the right side, I want that right low post to go into a short corner with his butt on the baseline. I want that left post to flash into a medium post on the ball side. So I have a triangle between the wing, the baseline short corner player, and a mid post. And I can throw the ball to either of the post players, and the other one looks for his partner. If not, I reverse the ball, wing to point, and then point to wing, and then the player that flashed, he now makes the X cut, and he goes to the short corner on the left side, and the short corner player on the right side, he flashes to a mid post on that side. That's the best I've ever seen against a 2-3 zone. Against the 3-2, what I like to do is I'd love to use pick and rolls. I'd love to screen the zone. I'd love to screen the point guard. So I will run our drag. I will run middle pick and rolls, and I will have shooters in the corner, and I would love to roll a postman down there. Or if I want to pick and pop, then I'll flash the other low post player to the ball side. And I think by screening the zone, you're now making people guard you. And I think that's really one of the things. In the 1-3-1, we use simply what we call hot. And all of these are in our app under our zone offenses. And that hot is something that we use always, whether we're attacking full, three-quarter, half court, or even regular zones that have an odd front. We can use it against the 3-2. We love it against 1-3-1s. And it's a 2-1-2 attack. And we love to have a terrific target in the middle. It could be a big, but we used to use Dennis Rodman there. He was the best middle guy we ever had. And here simply all it is this. As we would dribble the ball up the right side, okay, what we wanted to do is we wanted that guard to be ready to take a trap. And then with the off guard would be 2 steps behind the ball, but never more than 15 to 18 feet away from him. So it's a short, quick pass in reverse. The key is the hot man. The hot man is the player, whoever you designate, to play at the postman. And again, that player, rather than standing in the middle of the court, he goes ball side, elbow extended, lane line extended, ball side. And so now he pulls that defense over to the ball side to guard him. So when I swing the ball guard to guard, that player, as soon as he gets the ball in the guard-to-guard pass, he speed dribbles the ball into the front court and makes that wing guard him. And then we throw the ball ahead to the corner, and the opposite corner man flashes to the rim. And the hot man just goes elbow to elbow, post to post. He never rolls. And I'm telling you, it's a tremendous attack. But the best part about the hot attacks, Zach, is that it covers every one of those situations, press offense or half court 1-3-1. It's a great attack. And it was something that I've used from the college to the pro level, and it's been unstoppable for us.
Next, we've got a nice, we enjoy seeing this. Our state is that as a shot clock this year. Do you think with the shot clock that I should change my offensive approach?
Well, I at the high school level, I've seen a lot of shot clocks at 35 seconds. Why don't we just press the snooze button on your phone when you wake up? I mean, please, 30 seconds shot clocks, I see it more often at the same as that we have at the college level. But when I go, and I've said this many times on our podcast, when I go to Europe China, the Middle East, Australia, all those kids playing FIBA rules are playing with a 24-second clock from the time they're 14 years old. 24-second clock, 8 seconds to get the ball over half court. And you know what? I've never seen a kid in any of those countries and a coach not be able to play. It's the way Jay Billis taught me this years ago on one of our podcasts. Jay said the best part about a short clock, a 24-second clock, it teaches players how to make quick decisions. And that's what game of basketball is about, quick, smart decisions. So I would love that. 30 seconds is what it should be. Now, do you have to change your offensive approach? Absolutely not. The story I love to tell is the great Pete Carril from Princeton University. He, with no shot clock in the NCAA, Pete could take a minute and a half just running his offense over and over. Fabulous Princeton offense. All of a sudden, Pete Carril comes into the NBA. His former player, Jeff Petrie, is the general manager of Sacramento Kings. He brings him there, Pete, to be an assistant coach after he retired from Princeton. They put in the Princeton offense. And both Eddie Jordan, Rick Adelman, and later Lawrence Frank with the New Jersey Nets all used the Princeton offense. With the great Vince Carter, with all these players, with Chris Webber, Vlade Divac, the results were amazing because the Princeton offense, with its ball movement and player movement, with a 24-second clock, it was unstoppable. So what you believe in, do it. The clock just makes you take a shot a little quicker. That's all.
Throughout my career, I've always liked to use a team offense to get everybody touches to make them feel involved. But this year, I have a few players I think could be really good together in the pick and roll. That's never been me as a coach, but I am open to it. What do you think is the best way to teach and use this with my team?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, because when I teach our pick and roll at our different coaching youth clinics, I always ask the audience, how many of you use pick and rolls as a primary part of your offense? And the majority raise their hands. There'll be a few that say, I ask, how many of you do not use pick and rolls at all? 2, 3, 4 people might raise their hand. And I said, that's great. I have no problem with that. But you're going to play against teams, as you see in the audience, that use the pick and roll. So it's important that you know how to defend it and how it works. So that's my thing. So I'm going to give you some tips on offensive pick and roll. The biggest thing is to change the angles. Don't do just one angle, middle ball screen, only a side ball screen. There's many different angles on the court. There's a wing area. You can have the ball on the wing and a pick comes over. Ball in the corner and a pick comes halfway to you. Pick and rolls coming off both of the elbows, what we call commonly a horns or a V set. Middle pick and roll, just with one player in the middle of the floor. So the angles are incredible that you can have. Angles change to make the defense change, I believe. And then simply step-ups where just one single screen comes between the lane line and the sideline. Tough angles to defend. Now, here's the thing that I think is when you're teaching pick and roll, and everything I'm going to say to you as an offensive thing, now take that theory and now do it defensively. So the player with the ball, you have to decide who's the pick and roll for. The player with the ball, because he's a scorer, or the player that's the screener. And he might be, if I had Shaquille O'Neal, he screens, he rolls to the basket. I'm not looking to shoot. I'm looking to get the ball in there. Stan Van Gundy, when he was coaching Dwight Howard in the NBA, always using pick and roll. Dwight Howard couldn't shoot except it was a dunker from 2 feet. Okay, but what happened was he would set a screen, they would help on his good guard, and now all of a sudden a smaller player ended up guarding Dwight Howard. And you know where Stan posted him up? Right in front of the rim. And so I think there's different things. So you have to decide in the pick and roll, who's the more dangerous player? The guy with the ball or the screener? Conversely, when you're on defense, you have to ask yourself the same question. Who's more dangerous? The player coming off the screen, the shooter, possibly, or the player setting a screen. Example, NBA. Devin Booker in a pick and roll, coming off it, very dangerous. Player setting the pick and roll, Kevin Durant. Oh, Kevin Durant tonight will end up scoring his 30,000th point in the NBA. He's more dangerous than almost anyone. So now he can pick and pop. So if I help on the great Devin Booker, I want to trap him, I'm leaving a 30,000 career score in the NBA open. So now you have to decide how you're going to defend that. Here's the tips you need to know. Anytime you come off a pick and roll, come off the pick and roll at least 2 dribbles, and that because now it'll create spacing for the defense to make someone guard you. And the second tip I use with that player, when you come off a pick and roll, come off at least 2 dribbles, but come off with the intent to score. If I know you're going to shoot the ball or score, now I have to change. If you're coming off the pass, changes the whole way we guard you. And I think it's a really important thing. And so those are the biggest things. But I'm telling you, if you're going to play pick and roll, you really have to know how to teach it. And I'm finding a lot of people are running pick and rolls they see on Twitter. Okay? That's not where you find pick and roll plays. You got to really understand all the nuances. Noah Basketball is our new presenting sponsor of our Coaching You podcast. Noah Basketball is a shot tracking and data company that has helped change how coaches and players perfect the game's most important skill, shooting. Noah is a data service provider that uses machine learning and the latest computer vision technology to provide real-time data and feedback to improve shooting accuracy and consistency for professional and amateur basketball players. Noah has now analyzed over 570 million shots from countless high school, hundreds of college teams, and 28 NBA franchises. The technology is simply amazing. Once the system has been installed, players will be able to get immediate feedback on their shooting arc, left and right positioning, depth, makes or misses, and makes the data available to players and coaches on your mobile device. For more information about how Noah can help your team, visit noahbasketball.com. Coaches, are you looking to take your game preparation to the next level? Then FASTMODEL Sports is the perfect coaching software for you. With FastDraw, build an organized library of plays and drills and create professional playbooks to share with your players and staff. You can also download over 9,500 free plays and drills from our playbank directly to your FastDraw account. Looking for a better way to build your scouting reports and want to include video? With FastScout, build custom scouting report templates to prepare your team best for each individual opponent. Plus, did you know with the latest updates from FastModel Sports, you can now include video with your FastScout reports and share with your coaches and staff all within the FastScout mobile app. The combination of FastDraw and FastScout is by far the best way for you and your coaches to create winning game strategies and effectively communicate them to your team. Over 10,000 high school and youth coaches trust FastModel Sports products to help their teams reach their goals. To order, go to fastmodelsports.com. Use code COACHINGU15 to get 15% off any FastDraw or FastScout products. Remember, go to fastmodelsports.com. Use code COACHINGU15 to get 15% off any FastDraw and FastScout products.
Yeah, next up, we're going to have one of our younger Coaching You attendees. He says, I'm going into my second season as an AAU coach, which is an under-16 boys team. He said, last year we hardly had any time to practice, and we just played games the majority of the time. Do you have any ideas on how we can teach with limited time?
That's the biggest challenge, I feel. You know, some of the teams last year on the EYBL circuit, you know, with Nike, some of these teams would play 70 games over the course of the summer, spring and summer. And that's great. But if you asked them how many practices, they might have had 3, 4, or 5 before the season, or maybe one. Maybe one. I know a team that was in Peach Jam that finished in the Final Four that never had one practice before the season. They had a great team, great talent, but they don't practice. I always say in the NBA, we practice for 8 months to get in the playoffs. So the biggest difference that we see in Europe with club teams is they practice, and they don't play many games. So now, what do I do now? I'm playing this competitive program. What do? I really think you have to have a minimum of 2. I would practice starting about a month beforehand. I would try to have a weekend where I have my players together on a Friday, Saturday, or a Saturday, Sunday, and I consult with our friends in the British Columbia that run youth basketball up there, and they do a weekend where they have 4 practices, and I think it allows them. Then they come back and they have a 2 or 3 day training camp before they play their AAU games. I think it's a great idea, but at least now your team's organized. Make it simple, very simple, but I always believe that if you have talented players, really emphasize defense, because you can really take the defense that you have and make that your offense by getting stops. I remember with the Dream Team, we had Chuck, Lenny Wilkins, and Coach K on the staff, and Coach K wanted to put in an offense, and Chuck said, no problem, put in an offense. And poor Coach K, he had a wonderful little offense out of a high 1-4. And, we played, I think it was 16 games. Poor Coach K never got to run a damn play on his offense, because what we did is we just got stops, rebound, fast break. We never went into any set plays. So the defense was our offense. But get them organized. Try to get those weekend times together. When you do get a practice, since sometimes players are not all from the same town, really try to utilize that time and get several good workouts in.
To follow up on that, you had another question come in about extending defensive pressure. You want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in that. The more talented your team has, and some of these AAU teams, doesn't matter what sneaker company, the kids are fabulous at this age. The under 15, 16, 17s, kids I can't believe we have so many great talented guys playing high school ball in the States. And I just think the more talent you have, the better defensive team you can be. My biggest complaint with players at the high school, college, and pro level is even the high school kids, they all have a trainer. They all go to some gym where they have someone working with them. Nothing wrong with that. But the whole off season, all they're working on is offensive things. No one is working on passing, defense, rebounding, or playing 5-on-5 until you play your AAU games. So I really believe that if you play defense, this will really help your team. Also, it gets them enthused. If you're just going to come back and trade baskets, you can really make an imprint on the game. And I'll tell you what, college coaches, if it's an AAU situation, we're looking for guys that can really get after people and guard people. And I look at some of the best teams, we're in the SEC territory, Zach, in the Big 12 territory. Some of the best teams in the country, they can really get after you. And I'm thinking primarily of where you live in, Zach, in Houston, and our friends at Iowa State. My God, they really get after you and play. And the best teams in the SEC, or even teams that are super competitive, they can all guard.
We got another one coming in more on the player development side from a high school girls program. She says, going into next season, I'm going to be losing several of my older players, and I'll be relying heavily on a younger group next year. Some have contributed, some haven't, and they're going to have to play. What should I be looking to do in player development this offseason to help them come along fast through the summer and the fall?
Brad Stevens, when he was coaching at Butler University, in the summer, colleges weren't allowed to have summer practice. Coaches weren't allowed to touch their own student athletes that were there in summer school. The rules have since changed. And Brad and I were out doing an event at Nike for coaches, and he had just come from the Final Four, and he was so excited that he had just been able to have his first workouts with his team. And I said, what are you doing? He said, all my freshmen, all my young players, I personally did individual workouts as the head coach of Butler with all those freshmen. I said, why did you do it? You have a staff of 3 assistants. He said, because I quickly know that in the summer when we would bring freshmen in, they all got homesick. And so he said, when those kids would call home and they would say, how are things going? And they'd say, I don't know. I haven't seen Coach Stevens because he's out recruiting every weekend. Back then, they would go out for like 6-7 days in a row. He said, I wanted to impress on them that I cared about them, and I was the one that was coaching them. So now when they would call home, they'd say, Coach Stevens actually put me through a workout. And I thought it was really one of the things that I thought, and our friend Kevin Eastman used to say, Zach, the best thing about player development is building relationships with that player. And I think that is the biggest thing. So when you have young players, as a head coach, do those workouts, because there's nothing better as a teacher to do individual work, in the classroom with a student, showing them attention. Basketball, it's even 10x in my opinion. So I just think it's a really important thing. Teach them, go through the basic fundamentals, teach them things that they need to work on for your offense. And I think the investment will be better than anything you could ever do.
Next, I'll let you expand a little bit more on the team. We had an NCAA coach reach out from a very competitive league asking about style of play. You're very familiar with their personnel, so what did you recommend in terms of the style of play they should use?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is, and I love this level of basketball, whether it be NAIA, JUCO, D2 or D3, okay? This is where some of the very best coaches are. And we have people that have come to our events for 17 years that coach at this level, and they could coach at any Power 4 school. They just have been here, and they love it. And so the biggest thing, for coaches at that level is, I think, to pick out your talent will dictate the style of play. Every now and then, there's a coach that says, I teach Princeton no matter what style of play. I'm going to use the flex no matter who I have. That's fine. But I really think it's important, because nowadays you just don't know the players you're going to get at some of these schools, that you have to really take the players you have, the talent, and really develop the style of play around them. And there's so much stuff out there, but really make sure that whatever you teach them, that you're really, how to teach it, you're really good at it, but more importantly, that your players will have success in it. Chuck Daly used to use this expression, which I had never heard in coaching. And he said to me, never teach anything offensively or defensively, especially offensively, unless you know you're 100% sure it's going to work. Because if you show the guys a new play, a new offense, a new out-of-bounds play, and we can't score in it, guess what? They don't think you know what the hell you're doing. And so I've always done that. And I think, so the level of play doesn't matter. It's really the expertise of you teaching. And when you teach it with enthusiasm, but based on their skill level. Really important.
And the last one come through. This might be the best one we're going to cover here. I'm really struggling in the locker room after losses with my team. Let's just say that they can put a loss behind them a lot quicker than I can. How do you go about handling post-game talks?
As you know, Zach, we do a lot of consulting with college and pro teams, and it's the biggest problem that college coaches have. Pro coaches have become phenomenal at it because we play a lot of games, and they might be upset that they lost a tough game in overtime, but they know they got another game against another team on the road, or they have to take a flight and go back home, and they have to get their team ready. So here's the two things I think. When you lose a game, one of our clients this morning called me and said he just lost a game 101-100 in overtime. He was distraught, beating himself up for not doing, could do better. And so, I let him vent, and I said, okay, what's our rule? And he said, at midnight, we forget it, we put it behind us, and we go to the next day. We start with a clean slate. I said, right. Now, the key thing, though, is what do you do in the locker room after that loss? And that's where I think the damage is done, Zach. I think you come in, you lose a tough game, or you get your ass blown out. Okay, be honest with you, your team doesn't show up, but that's your responsibility as the coach. They don't come to play, and for whatever reason, You get bad refereeing, blame anything you want, but we got beat by 25 points. And you come in the locker room and immediately we're mad at the team. We're mad at the players. And the coaches go on a tirade and they're screaming and yelling and cussing at their guys. It never works. It only leaves scars on your players. So when I worked for coaches in the NBA when I first came in, you can probably figure out who they were that would do that. And when I go to work with Chuck Daly, all of a sudden we lose a game to the Bulls. Tough loss. Another one to the Cavs, who were the best team in the league at the time. Great team. Lenny Wilkins coached. Lose the game. Comes in the locker room, and I'm waiting to say, oh, boy, this is the first loss we had. Let's see what this is going to be like. He goes, okay, hey, 11 o'clock tomorrow. Let's put our hands in. I said, wait a minute. Wait a minute. We didn't scream at him, yell at him. What are we doing? And I said, we go back in the coach's locker room and said, what was that all about? He said, you don't know how many times I've screwed my teams up by coming in and accusing them of screwing up plays, and I hadn't even watched the film yet. And all of a sudden I watched the film. They didn't do anything wrong. It was me. So rather than do that, any corrections I make, I can do them on the practice court the next day or in a meeting room. And he said, what I do is I don't damage my players, my relationships with them. Then I always take blame. He said, I always take blame because we're an accountability business, but we're in a collective responsibility business where it's players and coaches. There's a lot of coaches that after a loss, they sit around as the coaches and they blame the players. They take no responsibility. So it's got to be collective. Players and coaches, we win together, we lose together. And I think it's so important to figure out, how are you going to handle losing as a coach? Everyone thinks they know how to handle winning, but how are you going to handle losing? I think it's so important. Something I didn't learn when I first started. Something I have a PhD in now, because I've lost a lot of games, but I've also won a lot of games too.
Well, I got a follow-up there too for you. So on top of that, it's not just in the locker room. We've seen several examples at the college and professional level of it spilling over into the post-game press conference. Not everybody is quite as equipped to handle that, and we've seen some scars, as you say, rear their ugly heads a couple weeks later.
Boy, oh boy, we're thinking of about 5 of them right now, aren't we, Zach?
Yeah, something like that.
So one of the things that I think you have to have when you go into the post-game presser is that you have to make sure that you don't assess blame on any player. And that if they ask about a certain player that you might have benched, that you didn't play enough, or you yanked him after a bad, 3 shots, or one player of one team we work with, the player came in 3 minutes, he was a minus. I've never heard 3 minutes of minus 12 last night. That's pretty hard. Okay. And the kid's a very good player. So now if you go in and you blame him, now you've lost that kid. Because you got to remember, they're either 15, 16, or 17 in high school, or they're 18 to 20, maybe 25 if all these rules keep going through in college, And so now, but don't blame the kids. You're the professional. You're the one getting paid, and this is your job to lead. And so I think it's really important that you make sure you don't do anything. And I love this expression, shout praise, whisper criticism, and don't leave scars on your players. It's so important.
No question. Well, if you guys want to, feel free to keep sending those questions in. Maybe we do this a little more often, once a month, once a quarter, just depending on how much comes in.
I really enjoy it, Zach, because, our Coaching U Plus app is awesome because, now 500 freaking clinician lectures we have on there. Some of the best teachings out there besides our podcast and all that. But more importantly, what we want to do is make sure we create a learning environment for people. And that's one of the things that we're so excited about. And so, when you come to any of our events that we're, running, quote unquote, this is what we do. You get our email, my personal email, and my cell and stuff, and we get to share with you and try to help you during the year, because this is a commitment to everyone in our community to help you grow and get better. And I hope you're having a good season. But once the season does end, that's when really, as we always say for our players, that's when players get better, between the end of the season and the start of next season. But more importantly, if we want our players to get better, the challenge is for us as coaches, we must get better. Because if we have better coaching, we develop better players. And if we have better coaching and better players, we have a better game. That's our mission, what we're trying to do. So until next week, Zach, this is the coach, Brendan Suhr, and my partner, Zach Kendrick. We'll see you then.